Welcome, if you dare, to a place where nightmares come to life. In the dark corners of this channel, you'll find the scariest stories that will make your blood run cold and your heart race with fear. Each tale is designed to keep you up at night, wondering if something is lurking just beyond the shadows. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're brave enough, and hit that notification bell. Because when you least expect it, the terror will find you. Midnight in the Downpour. The storm raged outside, drumming against the roof of an old wooden cabin buried deep within Black Hollow Woods. The cabin, abandoned for decades, was the perfect hideaway for a group of friends who wanted to spend a thrilling weekend away. But none of them could have imagined what lay in wait for them that stormy night. Are you sure this place is safe? Melissa's voice trembled, her eyes darting across the dimly lit room. Her usually confident demeanor was shaken as shadows twisted in the flickering light of a few meager candles. She tugged at her damp sweater, her hair plastered to her face from the rain outside. Come on, Mel, it's just a little creepy. Darren laughed, though his voice was strained. He was trying to act brave in front of the group, but even he couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling that had settled over him the moment they arrived. Besides, nothing scary ever happens in real life. Melissa shot him a look. That's what people say in horror movies before everything goes wrong. The others, Carly and Jake, rolled their eyes but remained silent. The storm had driven them into the cabin far earlier than planned. As night fell, the incessant thunder seemed to grow louder, more menacing, like some primal beast howling in the distance. I don't like this, Carly murmured, shivering as the wind whipped through a crack in the cabin wall, causing the candle flames to dance wildly. You'll be fine, Jake reassured her, though his hand rested uneasily on her shoulder. He glanced around at the shabby furniture and the layers of dust that covered every surface. It was clear no one had set foot here in years, maybe decades. Just imagine, Darren grinned, trying to lighten the mood. Some old hermit probably lived here, reading by candlelight, and... A sudden knock echoed from the door. The four of them froze. Jake's heart hammered as he exchanged a glance with Darren. Who could possibly be out there in the middle of a storm deep in the woods? They were miles from the nearest town, and no one else knew they'd be here. Did you guys hear that? Carly's voice was barely a whisper. Another knock, louder this time, followed by a dragging, scraping sound that sent a shiver down all of their spines. Maybe it's an animal? Darren offered weakly, inching back from the door. I don't think an animal would knock like that, Melissa whispered. She clutched her phone, but they all knew they had no signal this deep in the forest. Jake swallowed hard, bracing himself. I'll check it out. He approached the door, every instinct screaming for him to turn back. Still, he reached for the handle and pulled the door open. Rain lashed against the porch, but no one was there. There's nothing, Jake said, blinking against the darkness outside. But just as he started to shut the door, he spotted something. A muddy footprint smeared across the threshold, like someone had been standing there only moments before. Did you see that? He stammered, pointing. The others gathered around, their eyes wide with fear. The footprint was unmistakable, and it led away from the door, into the darkness. Melissa covered her mouth. Who was it? Before Jake could answer, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. All four of them jumped, their eyes wide with terror. Maybe we should go, Carly suggested, her voice high and panicked. We could drive back to town or sleep in the car. But as they turned to grab their things, they heard a soft, raspy voice coming from the shadows of the cabin. It was so faint, they thought they might have imagined it. Why, are you here? The question hung in the air, heavy and cold. Carly clutched Jake's arm, her knuckles turning white. Who's there? Darren called out, his voice quivering. His attempt at bravado was long gone. Silence. The cabin was still, the only sound the distant rumble of thunder. Then, suddenly the lights flickered, and in the momentary flash, they saw her. An emaciated woman stood in the corner of the room, her stringy hair plastered to her gaunt face, her skin sallow and stretched tight over her bones. Her eyes were hollow, dark as pitch, and her mouth hung open in a twisted smile that seemed to stretch impossibly wide. Darren backed away, stumbling into a chair. "What the hell? Who are you?" Melissa's voice was barely a whisper. The woman took a step forward, her gaze fixed on them. Her head tilted to the side, almost in curiosity, and then she opened her mouth to speak. "You shouldn't have come here." Her voice was hoarse, barely audible, like nails scraping against glass. The friends huddled together, terror freezing them in place. We didn't mean any harm," Jake managed to say, his voice shaking. The woman laughed, a wet, rattling sound. "It doesn't matter. You woke me." "Woke you?" Carly asked, tears streaming down her face. "We didn't do anything." The woman's expression turned dark, her hollow eyes glinting with something ancient and malevolent. "Oh, but you did. This place was mine, long before you were born. And now you are here, with me." Darren, still trying to muster some courage, stammered, We can leave. We can just go, right?" The woman's smile widened, impossibly, her mouth stretching from ear to ear. "Oh no," she hissed. "You are here to stay. Forever." The lights flickered again, and when they steadied, she was gone. Carly let out a strangled sob, pressing herself against Jake, who was visibly pale and trembling. What was that?" Melissa stammered, her hands shaking so violently she could barely keep the candle upright. "Some kind of ghost?" Darren whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "But ghosts aren't real, are they? Ghosts aren't..." Suddenly there was another sound, a slow scraping noise, like fingernails dragging across wood. It came from the walls, then from the floor beneath them. The noise grew louder, filling the cabin until it felt like it was coming from inside their own skulls. "Stop it!" Carly screamed, clamping her hands over her ears. "Make it stop!" But the scraping continued, relentless, until a voice, her voice, echoed once more. "Why? Are you here?" Jake felt the walls closing in, felt his sanity slipping as the lights flickered again. In that brief flash, he saw the woman, closer now, her face twisted in fury. Her mouth opened, wider than before, until her jaw seemed to unhinge, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "Run!" he shouted, grabbing Carly and bolting toward the door. But when he pulled on it, it wouldn't budge. The wood felt cold, damp, as though it were alive, breathing, trapping them within its decaying walls. Melissa clutched his arm, her nails digging into his skin. "What do we do? She's going to kill us." Darren, who'd been staring at the woman in horror, snapped out of his trance. We have to break a window. It's our only chance." But as he moved toward the window, the lights flickered again, and this time, when they steadied, the woman was standing right in front of him, her hollow gaze piercing his soul. "Leaving is not an option," she hissed, her voice filled with malice. Her bony hand reached out, brushing against Darren's face, leaving a trail of ice across his skin. He screamed, clutching his cheek where a dark bruise-like mark was spreading. "Please," Carly sobbed, "please just let us go." The woman leaned in close to her, her mouth stretched in a mocking smile. "I was never given mercy, neither will you." In a blur of motion, she vanished, only for the cabin to erupt into chaos. The walls seemed to pulse, like they were breathing, and shadows twisted and writhed across every surface. The scraping sound grew louder, now accompanied by faint whispers, as though the very walls were speaking. Darren dropped to his knees, clutching his head, his voice a strangled scream. "Make it stop! Make it stop!" "Hold on, Darren!" Jake shouted, pulling him to his feet. But the moment his hand touched Darren's arm, a searing pain shot through him. It was like fire and ice at once, burning into his flesh and freezing his bones. The woman's voice filled the cabin again, taunting, echoing. "You can't escape. You're mine now. Mine forever." The lights flickered once more, And this time they didn't come back on. Darkness swallowed the cabin, and in that pitch-black void, the friends heard her voice, soft and chilling, her words slicing into them like knives. "I've waited so long, for company." And in the darkness they screamed. The next morning, a search party from the nearby town found the cabin, empty and silent. The only sign that anyone had been there was a single muddy footprint on the threshold and 4 sets of abandoned belongings, scattered across the floor. Of the friends, there was no trace. The townspeople knew better than to search too long, for they had heard stories.